Kleiner Disclaimer vorweg, die heutige Folge ist auf Englisch, also nicht überrascht sein über den Sprachenwechsel.
Ihr hört die Irium Podcast, der Data Science und Machine Learning Podcast für Studienabsolventen und Young Professionals.
Today, my guest is the political data scientist Juan Carlos Medina Serrano. He's going to tell us what social bots are, how data science is used during election campaigns, and what to be aware of when forming an opinion. Stay tuned. Bachelor of Science in Engineering Physics, Master of Science in Data Engineering and Analytics, intern at BMW, data scientist at Octomine Technologies, and now he's doing his PhD in computer science in the field of political data science. I am very happy to talk to him today. Those were just a few milestones, I guess. Welcome, Juan Carlos Medina Serrano. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for inviting me, Iago.
Thanks for being here. Let's just jump right into it. Political data science. Here in the podcast, we like to get some insights into the different areas that you can work with data science in. And so political data science, can you describe what you are doing precisely, like a small overview? What do you do from day to day?
Sure. So political data science is a new field in data science. So it's mixing politics and machine learning. So this is a branch that used to be very famous before about predicting elections or doing campaigns. But now with the data generation processes and the amount of information being generated on social media, this has transformed at becoming one area that is very rich and where there's a lot of new topics that are happening at the moment, and they're very, let's call them hot topics. For example, the first one, of course, is elections. There are digital campaigns, how to create a digital campaign through micro-targeting using data science to be able to target your target citizens that would be voting for you to mobilize them to vote. This is one big area of political data science. This is not exactly where I focus. I've done some of the of digital campaigning, of helping or giving some advice, but I focus more on the other side, which is more about social media. How does political communication occurs on social media? How do users communicate with politicians? How do they communicate with themselves about politics? And of course, the dangers of misinformation on social media and how the different platforms tackle misinformation. This is more of my research area and where I like to focus more.
Mm-hmm. We can get more into that in a second. Just two small questions. When you say this is a new field, in science, new often means it's for instance in mathematics. I study mathematics at the LMU. New means 40 years ago. So can you maybe give a small estimate on what new means here? And yeah, do you have a small estimate for that maybe?
So I would say it began in 2008 with the campaigning of Obama. I think he was the first big campaigning where digital media was really used to it was used to generate voting behavior and to influence elections. I think the campaign from Obama was very successful in doing that and motivating young people to vote and using social media. And it was at the time something very new that of course was used again in 2016 in the campaigns of Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I'm basing mostly on the US because there's where the biggest election and political targeting has been done in the last years for different reasons, because there's a lot of money involved in political campaigns, because they have like the newest methods. But I think like since 2008, this field started where people were understanding that digital information can be crucial to understand the voters and to be able to understand them and to not manipulate them they could manipulate them, but to influence them or nudge them into some direction.
Of course, it's just what you want to do when you want to be elected, right? So, okay, so let's maybe talk about your work a bit. So you said that you work in social media, or rather, your work concerns more social media and misinformation there. Can you maybe give a small insight into how, without, of course, explaining any particular algorithms, but into how data science, or how you use data science to let's say, I don't know, mine social media?
Okay, so the first part of understanding social media is, of course, monitoring social media. So collecting data from the different platforms is of utmost importance, because without the data, there will be no insights and there will be no algorithms. Even if you have the best deep learning algorithms, it will not work. Like you need the good data. And for this, I have been for 3 years, I have been collecting data from the different platforms on German politics. So we have a big collection of Twitter, Facebook, YouTube videos, all related to German politics, because my research is mostly Germany, although I have also done something on the US. Uh, the first part is collecting the data, and then simply exploratory data analysis. It's already complicated when you have billions of tweets, for example, on elections. We like to collect data from different elections, or what the users are saying. And when you really obtain millions and millions of tweets, it starts to get complicated to analyze them, and especially to try to find some kind of patterns of misinformation, because it's quite hard to really define what misinformation is. It's easy to say fake news, but it's really hard to define it. I mean, that's why you have the fact checkers who really work on this and can really give you an explanation of each news. Why would it be misinformation? But there are a lot of different categories. Of course, there are like hoaxes, especially in the last months with coronavirus. There are big hoaxes where you can directly understand, okay, this is a conspiracy theory. I understand that this could be false, and the social media companies are removing this content. But with politics, it's really hard. And there's something that just happened yesterday, and I will mention it, that Facebook blocked an ad from the Trump campaign. This is the first time they do this. They didn't want they hadn't done this before, to block advertising from Trump, because this advertising contained an image from back from the Nazis, from the Nazi time, against the and Antifa, because of Antifa, against the left. The Nazis were using this symbol, and the Trump advertisement included this symbol, and Facebook for the first time decided to remove it. But it's really hard to really understand what is political misinformation. So in this case, they can argue, okay, this symbol is something that we don't want to be spread because there's a past. So there's a reference to it. But when there's political misinformation or attacking other political candidates, that's when it gets very tricky for social media companies to say, okay, that's disinformation, we should take it down.
Mm-hmm. Maybe to understand it a little bit more, I saw that you also have a website called politicaldashboard.de. I took a look into it, and it really just looks like what you just explained to me. You collected all the data, and then you can look into some statistics there and certain keywords, what party uses what keywords where. So, for instance, a couple of days ago, I think 1 week ago, there was a small scandal about Philipp Amthor, and you can see that the keyword Amthor is just for most of the parties the keyword number one in that week. So, can you maybe talk about the political dashboard more? Maybe explain it a little bit. I figure it's just exactly the same thing that you just said, but like put onto a website. Or am I wrong?
Sure. So the thing is, we were collecting so much data, And you know that research takes time. So if you collect the data, you analyze it, then you try to publish something, and then you have to have the reviewers. And until this is published, a year can happen. And it has happened to us that we have so very, very interesting data, and it takes a year till it's published. So we wanted to tackle this in a different way, to say we have this data and we want to show the world, especially journalists or politicians, what is actually happening online according to the German political environment. And that's why we decided to create this website, which is like a connection from our database, where we show daily analysis on the data. So we're collecting the data and we're creating live analysis on it, live, very simple algorithms to show the most important hashtags, or what are the URLs that are being shared the most on Facebook or on Twitter, and simply live showing them to anyone that wants to understand what is happening at the moment on these platforms in the German political landscape.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you do, but do you work alone or do you have a team around you? You probably do. What does this team look like? So, from which industry branch do the people originate from that you are working with?
So we were mostly like three PhD candidates who were working full time on this dashboard, and we were doing all the work together on the research side. Um, we have very different backgrounds. So one of us is more a statistician, and he studied economics. But he's really good at programming. So the thing that unites us three is programming. We're all three really like programming. We just have different backgrounds. One has a more economics background. The other one has a more philosophy and engineering background, and I have more the computer science physics background.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get into politics when you started? Because I told you before that when I did the intro that you also were working with BMW and Optimine Technologies. And so how did you end up where you are now? How did you get to politics?
So I decided I really liked, I wanted to do my career on data science quite a long time ago. So I knew that this was the direction, and that was why I was working with those companies, being a data scientist. But since I was young, I was always interested in politics. I was always reading about it, always being reading the news, reading books about politics. But it was hard to do something practical about it, especially since I studied physics. Like going from physics to politics is like a big jump, unless you're Angela Merkel, that you can do it. But if you're not, it's quite hard. So it was just like a hobby to me, to be always informed about U.S. politics and also German politics. I found it also interesting. But then it was 2016, and there was a U.S. election, and Trump won. And I said to myself, I think I need to do something about politics. I mean, it's how did that happen? What was happening on social media? I was very curious to understand what were the processes of how data science was actually creating this environment, political environment, and how it was shaping the minds of the people around the globe. So I decided I need to do something about politics. And that's when I decided to do my PhD with our professor is called Simon Hegelich, and he has been counseling the government. He has been also with Merkel, like to counsel her on topics of misinformation and such. So I knew that this was a good place to do research that had an impact on in this country.
Nice. And when you look back now on how you ended up where you are now, would you do anything different? So in your during your career at the university, would you say maybe I should have gotten into politics earlier, or was everything fine the way it was? Because I think, of course, physics is probably also your passion. Um, So what would you say about that?
I guess I would have wanted to go into programming before. I started like when I was 19 or something, but I know that if you start way earlier, then then you have a big advantage. And I guess also on the side of understanding more on machine learning, and that's something I liked from the beginning, but I was not specializing on it. So I was learning other things. It was just part of it, but it was not my main focus until I really decided, okay, this is what I want to focus on.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some politics related stuff, or rather politics intersection with data science. So a word that I found on the internet and also on the website of Simon Hegelich actually is the word social bot. Can you explain to us, or can you define this word for us, and what is it all about? Social bots,
Sure.
what is that?
Social bots. So social bots is very connected to Twitter, because on Twitter it is possible to automate an account and simply create a small computer program and start tweeting about it or retweeting other people. And this is allowed by Twitter, that you create these automated bots. And this is part of the Twitter ecosystem. But of course, there are some accounts that are that want to look like real users. So they are not really, they don't want to look like they're automated, and they want to try to spread news, spread out, for example, conspiracy theories or some misinformation, and try to target some demographic groups on Twitter. And they're called social bots because they are not like simple bots that are just trolling and sending spam messages, but they really want to look like real users that are supporting a political candidate, or they're against some measures, so that the users that are reading these tweets will be at the end somehow convinced that these are real users, and to try to these bots try to manipulate in a way public opinion. But I do have to say, like, there was a big hype around this world, and there was the conversation, are social bots like threatening democracy, or what is the impact of these bots? And it's really hard to say. I mean, I've been investigating social bots in the last years, and at the end, I say my conclusion is, okay, they do exist, but their impact is somehow not as big as it can be, because most users or people have a political opinion, and it's really hard to change it. Even if you want to change the political opinion of your best friend or your uncle, it's not going to be easy. like like it's not something that a fake account is going to manage to change a political opinion of someone. This is not going to happen. And there's no artificial intelligence, or there's no method until now to create a chatbot that would really make someone think that there's time to change a political opinion on something. However, when you have like an army of bots that are tweeting constantly on some topic, you can get the impression of what is happening on Twitter. It's what many other people are thinking. That it's not only you, but there's this big community that thinks the same way as you do. And then this just reinforces your bias, your ideas. And this is what the perception of reality can be a little bit changed by these automated programs. But to a certain extent, there are bigger influences like media or other sources of bias.
So it kind of triggers conformity in a way, so that or is it really just reinforcing opinions that you had already? Or can it also be like, okay, I see that there are a lot of people that think that way, so maybe I should also rethink. So, or
I think you already have like an opinion, but probably you're not very sure about it, and you're not very like, oh, I have either a conspiracy theory or I have this political idea. But when it gets reinforced, and it gets also like further ideas on this, then you can really try. You really think that it exists, and this is something that we were not able to measure until the last months with the coronavirus. crisis, there was this kind of infodemic where there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of conspiracy theories going around. And when we were really seeing how many users are really believing these conspiracy theories because there are so many, they watch a YouTube video and they see there are a lot of views, there are a lot of people who are commenting themselves in the same way. So they think, hey, it's true what I was thinking. The government is to be blamed, or China or something like that.
Yeah. And would I be able to distinguish a social bot from a real Twitter account, so to say? Or is it just so similar or so sophisticated?
Most of these accounts are just sharing some kind of news.
Okay,
So it's
so they're
like
just
you're not,
retweeting and not,
yeah,
they don't even write anything. They just
yeah,
retweet or like or anything.
or copy the headline just. So most of the time, if you interact with one, you will just be like, when you look at the trending topics and you're like scrolling down the tweets, you're like just read someone posting a piece of news, but you will not stop and think, oh, is this a real user? Because if you really go and click to the user, probably you would see that it has very few friends, or that it's only retweeting the whole time and it's not like expressing real emotions or something. So it can be, if you look at the user, you would find it's not a real user, but mostly the way you encounter them is not the way that you would ask yourself, is this a real user or not?
So maybe can you give us also sort of an estimate on how dangerous different social media platforms are, or not really dangerous, maybe how can you give us an estimate on the impact of the different social media platforms? So maybe some people say that like the performance of Trump on Twitter did a lot for him during the election in 2016, and maybe he didn't do too much on YouTube. Maybe there were just a couple of small videos of him, like meme videos. Or can you give us an estimate on that? How impactful the different platforms are?
So it definitely depends on each country. For example, in Germany, Twitter is not very popular, so I would say like Twitter is not very impactful in Germany. Although the journalists and politicians are on Twitter, so they could be somehow manipulated, but not many of the real users, because there are not many of them on Twitter. They're mostly on Facebook. So I would say but that's different in the US, right? In the US, Twitter is more popular, so there are more users interacting with the platform. I think the problem with Twitter definitely is that you can create this automated account. So and it's quite easy. So there are you can create like an army of bots. But the real impact, it's not like you would become a friend with one of these bots. When we see Facebook, I think like right now, also with Trump, I think he used more Facebook than Twitter. Like in his budget of how much he spent on the campaign, it was mostly on Facebook, and he did quite a remarkable job there, I would say, on digital campaigning on Facebook. Like if you compare it to Hillary Clinton, she did not spend any big quantity of money on Facebook in comparison to Trump. So he had millions of dollars being spent on Facebook. So I think that was like really something that definitely helped him more than Twitter, than his tweets. But like these micro targeting ads on Facebook. And if you want to compare, like your question, like comparing different platforms, it's hard to really find what is like the difference, how harmful they are. But definitely, I think it depends on how many people are using the services. And there are other that are not social media platforms like WhatsApp and Telegram, where many users are spreading false information, especially in countries like Brazil, Mexico, or India, where these services are used much more than Facebook or Telegram. And this is the main place where misinformation or political campaigning is happening at the moment. So I think it depends on the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, probably a lot of people also from my friends and also me, I received on WhatsApp like these messages shortly before there was the lockdown in Germany during the Corona crisis, that you should go out now and buy as much spaghetti as you can and paper, which of course was completely false. But yeah.
Yeah, but like you get in India with WhatsApp, like there are people that have been murdered because of false rumors on people that had, yeah, raped someone in a village. So everyone goes to the village and they murder, lynch the person because of these rumors. So they're like different kinds of misinformation that how dangerous they are.
Yeah, just because of some message on your smartphone. Crazy. So maybe to conclude a little bit, so also to give maybe like a hands-on tip for our listeners, the complexity masters. Two more questions. What do you think will the future of politics look like, and how also how we perceive it, and what do we have to be aware of when forming an opinion, like right before an election? So for instance, if there's the upcoming general election in Germany, and what do I have to be aware of when I choose to vote a certain party or not? Do you have like any hands-on tips?
So definitely getting informed by different media is always helpful. So media literacy is always good, and looking at different platforms, not only social media, but reading also news media outside of social media, because definitely you're in a filter bubble of your social media, of you're getting just one part of the narratives. So it's always good to be more, even though you obtain so much information on your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed, it's always good to have third party information to look at, and always be aware that there can be some false information going around, and probably you are informed, and then it will not be a problem if you encounter them, but you have to think that you also have probably other friends or family which could be more susceptible to this kind of misinformation. So you can, it's also hard to tell to these people, hey, what you think is false, like I can prove it to you. But always this, making a discussion always helps to try to, not only yourself but also to other people, to try to inform them in an unbiased way. For example, just uh, giving a newspaper a subscription, I don't know, that could be one idea.
So, one more question: if there's, I mean, on many platforms, you also have these algorithms that reshape your timeline on your interests. So, would you say that it's also a good idea to actively reshape this bubble you're in? Because for instance, on Twitter, I think I'm not quite sure about the algorithm that does it or how it does it, but for instance, I on Twitter, I kind of I feel like I'm in a certain bubble and I feel like comfortable in this bubble, but of course this is just a feeling and not like a hard fact. And I figure that there's also a lot of political opinions that I get that are just from my bubble and not from different parties.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad to stay in your bubble. I mean, you feel comfortable and you don't want to read the whole day commentaries of things that you probably don't believe or like you're against with. So it's not about, hey, I want to be like, know all of it and understand everything and just reshape my bubble. It's okay to stay in your bubble, just to be conscious that you're in a bubble. Like just like, yeah, I'm conscious of that. I think that's enough. I mean, you don't need to change your complete uh, your complete followers or something. Or what you can also do is try like other platforms. I mean, what I'm doing right now, I'm researching on TikTok, which is I don't know if you know this new platform, social media platform. And actually, there's not much politics happening there in Germany, but there's a lot of politics happening in the US.
Okay.
Like there are a lot of content of younger users creating political content. And now the new generations are obtaining their information through these channels. They think, okay, Facebook is old, Twitter is old. They're using these new channels and also using them for politics. So I think that I'm not saying change to TikTok, but I'm saying like there will be other platforms in the future, and the algorithms behind these platforms are different to the ones that are right now. So I think this will change with time. Also, this whole political communication and how it happens online.
That was super interesting. Thank you, Juan Carlos, for talking with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
This was my interview with Juan Carlos. I think it was super interesting to hear how social media can influence you and your thinking when it comes to politics. What do you think? What kind of things does one have to be aware of when forming an opinion, especially in the age of social media? And how does social media influence you in your opinions? Let me know on our social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. If you want to know how a transition from political sciences to data science can happen, you might enjoy our episode with Fabian Müller. It is linked in the show notes. Master the complexity.
Jeden Dienstag erscheint eine neue Folge von The Irium Podcast. Um auf dem Laufenden zu bleiben, folgt uns auf Facebook, Instagram, Twitter und LinkedIn. Wenn ihr uns unterstützen wollt, gebt uns eine 5-Sterne-Bewertung auf Apple Podcasts, folgt uns auf Spotify und empfehlt uns weiter. Bis zum nächsten Mal bei The Irium Podcast.